If you spend enough time on a watch, every now and then you come across a site that just stops you mid-scroll. That's exactly what happened when I landed on Cappen. It was featured as Site of the Day back in November last year. The moment you move your cursor across the page, this thick fluid ink trail follows behind it, swirling, reacting, dissipating, almost like dragging ink across a wet canvas. But what really makes it stand out is how it interacts with the typography underneath. Whenever the fluid overlaps the text, the colors invert, and that one detail is what makes the whole thing feel so alive. I had this sitting on my list for a while. It looked complex, fluid dynamics, pressure solvers, velocity fields, so I kept putting it off. But last week, I finally sat down with it. After some research, I came across an open source project on GitHub called WebGL Fluid Simulation. I'll leave a link to it in the description. I repurposed the shaders from that project, restructured the architecture, and with some help from Claude, built my own version of the effect. The inversion is handled by a single CSS property, mix blend mode set to difference on the canvas, and that's really what ties the whole visual together. In this video, I'll walk you through the entire setup, the simulation class, the shader pipeline, the render targets, and how it all comes together with the HTML and CSS to get that final result. If you'd like to access the source code for this project, along with hundreds of other similar micro projects and a brand new website template every month, you can check out the Pro membership via the link in the description. And if you find my work helpful, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Alright, let's get into the code. Let's start with the markup. The page content here is really up to you. You can put whatever you want on this page. The only thing that actually matters is that you have a canvas element somewhere in the document. Everything else is just for the demo, so I'll keep it simple. I'll add a nav with two containers inside, one for the logo and one for the links. Just some placeholder anchors in each, nothing fancy. Then a hero section with a div inside it for the header, and three h1 elements with some dummy copy to give us something to look at. The layout is just there, so we have a real page to work with. And then finally, outside all of that, a canvas element with an ID of fluid. This is where the entire simulation will be rendered. We'll be targeting this element when we initialize the fluid class later on. That's really all the markup we need. Let's move on to the styles. First, I'll pull in two Google fonts, Inter for the headings and logo, and DM Mono for the navigation links. Then a quick reset, zeroing out margin, padding, and setting box sizing to Potter box globally. For the H1, I'm going uppercase, font weight 900, and using clamp for the font size so it scales nicely between viewport sizes. Line height tight at 0.9 and a slight negative letter spacing to keep it feeling compact. For the anchor tags, DM Mono, small size, uppercase, no underline, black. Next, the nav. Fixed to the top, full width, flexbox with space between to push the logo and links on the opposite ends. I'll give it a z-index of 2 so it sits above the page content. The logo link gets entered at font weight 900 to match the heading style, and the nav links container is just a flex row with a generous gap between each item. For the hero section, full viewport height, white background, flex column with content centered vertically. Then inside, the header div is also flex column, and I'm using align self to offset each h1 differently. The second one pushes to the right, the third one sits centered. That staggered alignment is what gives the layout that editorial feel. Now the important one, the canvas. Fixed, covering the entire viewport with inset 0, pointer event set to none so it never interferes with any interaction on the page below it, and z-index 100 to sit above everything. And then mix blend mode difference. This is the property that makes the whole effect work. The canvas renders white ink and difference inverts whatever is underneath it. So on the white background it shows as black, and when it crosses over dark text, it flips to white. And finally, a small media query for mobile. The nav links stack vertically and all three h1 elements center aligned regardless of the nth child overrides above. That's the styles done. Let's move on to the JavaScript. Now this is the most involved part of the project, the shaders. And before we get into them, a quick note on where these came from. These are repurposed from Pavel Dugrad's WebGL Fluid Simulation project on GitHub. I didn't write these from scratch. I took the core shader logic from that open source project and restructured it to fit the architecture we are building here. So credit where it's due. If you want to study the original, just search WebGL Fluid Simulation on GitHub and you'll find it. Now, the way I've structured this is as a plain JavaScript object. Each key is the name of a shader pass, and each value is a 2-element array containing the vertex shader and the fragment shader as strings. All of them share the same vertex shader, so I pulled that out into a variable at the top to avoid repeating it. Same with the precision declarations, just 2 short strings I can interpolate into each fragment shader. First up is the splat shader. This is what actually paints the fluid whenever you move your cursor. It takes current texture, your cursor position, and injects a Gaussian blob of color or velocity at that point. The radius and aspect ratio uniforms make sure it stays circular regardless of the viewport shape. Next is the shader that moves the fluid forward through time. It looks up where each pixel was coming from based on the current velocity field and carries that value forward. The dissipation uniform is what makes the fluid gradually fade out rather than accumulate forever. Then divergence. This calculates how much the velocity field is expanding or contracting at each point, essentially checking whether fluid is being created or destroyed somewhere it shouldn't be. That information feeds into the pressure solve that comes after. Curl follows. This measures the rotation in the velocity field at each pixel, sampling the 4 neighbors and computing the difference. The result is used by the next shader, which is vorticity. This takes the curl values and uses them to amplify the spinning motion in the fluid. It's what gives you those tight swirling trails rather than a flat smear. The curl strength config value controls how aggressive this is. Then the pressure shader. This is the iterative solver. We run this one in a loop, typically around 50 times per frame, gradually converging on a pressure field that satisfies the incompressibility constraint. It's the most expensive part of the simulation, but also what makes the fluid feel physically believable. After that, the gradient subtract. Once we have the pressure field solved, this shader uses it to correct the velocity field, subtracting the pressure gradient so the fluid stays divergence free. This is what keeps the simulation stable. Then clear, a simple one. It just multiplies the existing pressure texture by a decay value each frame, which stops pressure from building up indefinitely between solves. And finally, display. This is the shader that actually renders to the screen. It samples the dye texture, calculates the brightness at each pixel, and uses a threshold to decide whether to draw or not. The ink color uniform is what we set to white, and combined with the difference blend mode in CSS, that's what produces the inversion effect on the page. That's all the shaders. Next, let's set up the simulation class. Now for the main engine, the fluid simulation class. And I want to be upfront here, I didn't write this from scratch manually. WebGL has a lot of low-level concepts involved: render targets, frame buffers, ping-pong buffers, shader passes. Writing a full fluid simulation engine by hand from scratch is not something I'd sit down and do. As I have mentioned multiple times before, I do not have any experience writing WebGL code. But here is the thing, with AI, that shouldn't stop you from building something cool. So I described what I needed, worked through it with Claude, and what came out is this clean, well-structured class that handles the entire simulation. That's the kind of the point. In these times, you don't need to know how to write WebGL from scratch to build effects like this anymore. So let me quickly walk you through this structure before we get into the individual methods. The class has a constructor and 7 private methods. The constructor takes the canvas element and a config object and simply calls each setup method in sequence: renderer, scene, targets, materials input, and then kicks off the loop. Clean and linear, easy to follow. First, setup renderer. This creates a three.js WebGL renderer using our canvas element with alpha enabled so the background stays transparent. It sets the pixel ratio, capped at 2 to avoid overdoing it on high DPI screens, sizes it to the full viewport, and stores the physical pixel dimensions accounting for that ratio. There is also a resize listener to keep everything in sync if the window size changes. Next, setup scene. This is very minimal: a three.js scene, an orthographic camera, and a single full screen quad mesh. That's it. The camera is set up so the quad feels the entire view exactly. We are not doing any 3D rendering here, just drawing the full screen shader passes one after another. The quad is just the surface we swap materials onto for each pass. Then setup targets. This is where the render targets are created. These are the off-screen buffers that the GPU renders into instead of directly to the screen. There are 2 types here: single targets, which just holds one texture, and double targets, which holds a read and a write texture with a swap method. This ping-pong pattern is essential for passes that need to read from the same buffer they are writing to. We create separate targets for velocity, dye, divergence, curl, and pressure, each sized according to the simulation and dye resolution from the config. Setup materials is next. This takes every shader we defined earlier and wraps each one into a three.js shader material with its corresponding uniforms. I've got 3 small helper functions at the top, text for texture uniforms, num for float uniforms, and vector2 for vector uniforms, just to keep the initialization clean. The result is a single materials object with a named entry for every shader pass we'll need to run. Setup input handles the mouse and touch tracking. It stores the current cursor position and calculates velocity by comparing the new position to the previous one each time the mouse moves. The delta multiplied by the force strength from config is what determines how hard the fluid gets pushed. The mood flag is just a simple gate, so we only trigger a splat on frames where the cursor actually moved. Now the two utility methods, pass just assigns a material to the quad and renders the scene to a given target, or to the screen if the target is null. Set just updates the materials uniforms in bulk and returns it. These two together are what make the rest of the code read cleanly. Almost every simulation step is just one linear combining these two. Splat is what happens when you move the cursor. It runs the splat shader twice, first targeting the velocity buffer to inject movement in the direction you are dragging, then targeting the die buffer to inject the visible ink. Both get swapped after writing, so the result is immediately available for the next frame. Simulate is the heart of the engine. This is where the actual fluid physics happen every frame. It runs through the full pipeline in order. First, curl to measure rotation in the velocity field, then vorticity, which uses that curl data to amplify the spinning motion and give the fluid that characteristic swirling behavior, then divergence to check whether the velocity field is expanding, then the pressure buffer gets partially decayed with the clear shader. Then the pressure solver runs in a loop, 50 iterations by default, gradually converging on a valid pressure field. Then gradient subtract, which uses that pressure to correct the velocity and keeps the fluid incompressible. And finally, advection runs twice, once for the velocity field advecting itself forward and once for the die field being carried along by the velocity. Render is the simplest method. It just runs the display shader targeting null, which means it renders directly to the screen. And finally the loop. It calculates delta time each frame, caps it to 16 milliseconds to keep the simulation stable if the tab loses focus, checks if the cursor moved, and runs a splat if so, then calls simulate and render and schedules itself again with request animation frame. That's the full engine. Now let's wire it all up in the main script file. This is the last while, the entry point that ties everything together, and honestly, it's satisfyingly short. First, the imports, three.js and the fluid simulation class we just built, then the config object. This is the single place where you control the entire behavior of the simulation. Let me quickly run through what each value does. Sim resolution and die resolution control the size of the internal buffers. Sim at 256 handles the physics. Die at 1024 keeps the visual output sharp. Curl controls how aggressively the fluid spins and swirls. Pressure iteration is how many times the pressure solver runs per frame. Higher means more accurate but more expensive. Velocity dissipation and die dissipation both sit at 0.95. Values close to 1 mean the fluid lingers longer before fading out. Lower values make it dissipate faster. Splat radius controls how wide the ink blob is when you move the cursor. Force strength determines how hard the fluid gets pushed based on how fast you move. Pressure decay controls how much of the pressure field carries over between frames. Threshold at 1 means only the brightest part of the die render. Bring this down and you get a softer, more spread out look. Add softness at 0 keeps the edges sharp. Increase it and you get a smoother fall off. And ink color is set to pure white, which combined with the difference blend mode is what produces the inversion effect on the page. These are the values I landed on after a quite bit of tweaking. Feel free to experiment with them and see how the behavior changes. And then finally, one single line, we grab the canvas element by its ID and pass it into the fluid simulation constructor along with the config. That's it. The whole simulation starts running from that one line. And that's the entire project. Hope you found the video helpful. See you in the next one.